You didn't stumble upon this video by mere accident. Something deeper, almost magnetic within you, drew you to this exact moment, to these words, to this message. And by the end, the reasons will feel unmistakably clear. There are individuals whose presence alone makes a profound impression. They don't seek attention, nor do they attempt to persuade, yet their energy influences and silently shifts those around them. They inspire without words and evoke transformation without intention. These people often serve as living mirrors, not in a superficial sense that merely reflects surface realities, but in a profound, almost spiritual way. They highlight what others have long buried or chosen to ignore within themselves. Psychologist Carl Jung once proposed that what irritates us in others can be a doorway to self-awareness, and there are souls whose very existence invites that kind of awakening, simply by being present. These aren't teachers in the traditional sense. They don't instruct through language or advice, but through the energy they radiate. Their essence resonates like an invisible frequency, stirring something unspoken in others. Perhaps you've never heard it said about you, or maybe even you haven't fully recognized it. But if you've noticed recently that your mere presence seems to shift the atmosphere in a room, draw out honesty, or make others feel emotionally exposed, without you doing or saying anything specific, you may be one of those rare mirrors. And it's not always an easy role to play. Being a mirror means reflecting both the brilliance and the shadows of others, and not everyone is prepared to see their inner truth. One of the first signs? People start changing around you without understanding why. It's not because of your actions or words, but because something about your energy subtly penetrates their defenses. You've probably seen how some feel an inexplicable calm near you, while others become restless or even agitated. You might sit quietly feeling the shift in mood around you and wondering what caused it. No matter how much you try to remain neutral or passive, your presence seems to bring to the surface whatever is lingering beneath the surface in others. Someone carrying anxiety may feel that anxiety heighten when you're near. A person suppressing grief might find it impossible to hold it in around you, and those who have long disconnected from their emotions may suddenly be confronted with their numbness just by being in your company. This confrontation, though not verbal or deliberate, often stirs discomfort. Your energy works like an unfiltered reflection, raw, honest, unmasked, and for those who hide behind facades or avoid their true selves, this authenticity can be overwhelming. You don't intend to challenge anyone, yet your vibration uncovers what others work hard to conceal. Jung suggested that our encounters with others often serve as paths to understanding ourselves. In your case, you've unknowingly become that mirror for many, an energetic reference point where truth quietly emerges. You don't expose it with your words, but by holding space with such genuine presence, that illusion has little room to survive. Perhaps you found yourself wondering why people open up to you so easily, sharing vulnerable confessions they've never told anyone else. Maybe you've noticed others become tearful in your presence, even when there seems to be no trigger. This is no accident. It's resonance. Your energetic field seems to create safe containers for others to access parts of themselves they couldn't reach alone. In those moments, truth surfaces, not because you demanded it, but because your presence gives it permission. Though this gift has left you feeling emotionally drained at times, you're beginning to realize the truth. You're not absorbing other people's feelings, you're awakening them. Your frequency, aligned with honesty and depth, no longer tolerates superficiality, denial, or shallow interactions. You act as a catalyst. Simply by existing, you mirror back what needs to be acknowledged. And yes, this path has come with its share of misinterpretations, moments of rejection, and confusing emotional distance from others. But you no longer blame yourself for that. You're beginning to understand. Some people simply aren't ready to face their inner landscape. You weren't sent here to make that process easier by softening the reflection. You're here to hold it with love, even when the other person isn't yet able to see it for what it is. Another unmistakable sign is when people begin projecting their unresolved emotions onto you. You may have noticed that, in certain interactions, you become the recipient of unprovoked anger, misplaced frustration, or even unexpected emotional confessions. as if your energy becomes a container for things others can't bear to carry themselves. This isn't random. Jung taught that what we refuse to accept in ourselves often gets projected onto others. Without intending to, you've become that other, the symbolic canvas where people place what they've denied within. Your ability to remain grounded and open makes it safe for others to unconsciously unload their emotional weight, even if neither of you fully understands the moment as it happens. You've likely noticed that these emotional projections aren't limited to your closest relationships. Often they come from strangers, casual acquaintances, or people you've encountered only once. Something about your energetic presence stirs dormant emotions in them, feelings that have been locked away, denied, or suppressed for a long time. It's as though your field of energy serves as a mirror, one so clear that it becomes impossible for others to avoid their own reflection in it. At first, this might have left you wondering if you were somehow responsible. You questioned your demeanor, your expressions, your tone, wondering if your behavior might be inviting such reactions. But now you're beginning to understand. It's not what you do, it's simply what you are. You've come to realize that your presence operates as a kind of conduit, offering emotional release to those who lack the tools to process their inner states. Although being on the receiving end of emotional outbursts or misplaced intensity can feel deeply unfair, you're learning that it's rarely personal. It's an energetic interaction that speaks to a much deeper psychological process. Jung described projection as a subconscious defense, and in many cases, you unintentionally become the screen onto which others cast both their wounds and their unacknowledged strengths. That's why some people may idolize you, placing you on a pedestal you never asked for, while others may suddenly criticize you or attribute feelings and intentions to you that aren't yours to carry. You've also begun to see the deeper value behind these experiences. Even though they can be draining, these moments can serve as wake-up calls for others. What people project onto you is often their soul's way of nudging them toward greater self-awareness. And when you stand firmly in your own grounding, without taking on the weight of others' emotions, without reacting defensively, without shrinking from discomfort, you create a space where transformation is possible. In doing so, you allow those projections to dissolve into understanding. Still, this path has not been without its emotional toll. You've cried tears that didn't come from your own story. You felt exhaustion that had no origin in your own life. But now, with more clarity, you see that you don't have to absorb in order to reflect. You can hold emotional space without letting it consume you. And in that quiet realization, you've reclaimed your freedom. Understanding that what others see in you is often a reflection of themselves brings lightness to your steps. You can continue to serve as a mirror without losing your inner image. You've also come to see that these projections aren't just emotional baggage, they're encoded messages. When someone reacts with anger, overwhelming admiration, resistance, or immediate dislike, you've learned to interpret those responses not as a judgment of your character, but as signs of inner turmoil they have yet to face. It's not about you. It's about the parts of themselves they haven't reconciled, the truths they haven't had the courage to integrate. And rather than defend your stance or explain your heart, you've developed the wisdom to simply hold the space with presence and poise. You've discovered that your role isn't to persuade anyone or to be understood by all. Your role is simply to reflect, honestly, deeply, and without distortion. This reflection can be unsettling. It can bring discomfort, trigger resistance, or shake someone's emotional foundation. But it isn't because you've done anything wrong. It's because your energetic frequency makes it harder for others to maintain illusions. Jung once observed that whatever we fail to acknowledge in our own psyche reappears externally, disguised as conflict, adversity, or opposition. Unintentionally, you've become that external force for many, an unexpected mirror that brings their unhealed aspects into view. You've become the canvas upon which others paint their shadows, their unmet desires, their unresolved inner battles. And while this has left you emotionally depleted at times, you're learning not to mistake these projections for your own truth. You're developing the strength to stay grounded, even when others attempt to burden you with emotions that don't belong to you. You've become a clear and steady presence, one in which people's truth surfaces, whether they recognize it or reject it. And through this quiet act of holding space, you've grown stronger. You're no longer splintering yourself to gain approval. You've stopped adjusting your energy to become more acceptable. You know now that those who are truly ready to face themselves will find in you a sacred opportunity for healing, and those who aren't ready may experience you as a challenge, a provocation, even a disruption. Both responses are valid, because your purpose isn't to make people feel comfortable. It's to remain loyal to the frequency you've been called to embody. One of the clearest signs that you are this kind of mirror. People feel emotionally exposed around you, even when you haven't said a word. You've observed how conversations around you tend to dive deeper without warning. Superficial talk gives way to vulnerable truths. Silences become charged with meaning, and your presence alone seems to invite others to shed their layers and look within. Jung spoke of the soul's innate ability to recognize spaces where it is safe to reveal itself without fear of judgment. Without intending to, you've become one of those rare spaces. Your energy feels safe, real, and unthreatening to the truth, and you've realized that you don't have to guide anyone through their journey or force any dialogue into depth. Your way of being, your grounded silence, your open gaze, your stillness, naturally invites authenticity to emerge. Sometimes, just by being fully present, you allow what's false to fall away. You don't demand vulnerability, but it arrives. Anyway, you don't ask for masks to be dropped, but they fall nonetheless. Even those who typically shield themselves behind intellectual defenses or curated personas often find themselves opening up in your presence, as if their inner self has been waiting for a moment where it could safely exhale. It's not because you do something overtly impressive. It's because your energy emanates a frequency that honors what is authentic. You've moved beyond surface-level exchanges, beyond pretending to resonate with things that don't feel true. You no longer participate in conversations that lack substance or perpetuate emotional disconnection. This deep alignment you've cultivated, this energetic integrity, is palpable, even if it can't always be logically explained. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious recognizing when a space is safe for genuine expression, and you have become that space. Your energy no longer seeks to manipulate, fix, or be liked. It simply allows. It holds steady. It welcomes without demand. You're capable of holding silence without discomfort. You're able to sit with pain without rushing to soothe it, to witness someone's vulnerability without trying to cover it with advice or reassurance. And in that clear, compassionate presence, people often feel free to show parts of themselves they've kept hidden, even from themselves. That permission, the freedom to just be, is something many have never been offered. And perhaps it's something you yourself longed for in the past, which is why you can now offer it so naturally. This effortless ability to invite openness is one of the clearest signs that you function as an energetic mirror. People instinctively feel they can let go around you. They cry without shame, they name truths they've buried for years, they unravel in ways they didn't know were possible. And you, without crossing boundaries, without judgment, without trying to carry what isn't yours, simply hold space, as if your presence itself were a sacred altar where others reconnect with their essence. Although it can feel overwhelming, at times to be that point of emotional access for so many, you've come to understand that your role isn't to fix what arises. Your task is not to take ownership of someone else's emotional process. Your role is to remain centered, grounded in your own presence, allowing what needs to come up to do so, without attachment to outcome. And that quiet power is more transformative than any intervention. You've also realized that this space you offer won't always be met with immediate gratitude. Some people, after opening up around you, may feel exposed and uncomfortable. They might even pull away, ashamed or defensive, not because you've done anything to harm them, but because they've touched a part of themselves they weren't ready to face. Your presence didn't expose them. It simply illuminated what was already there, waiting to be seen. As Jung observed, the soul doesn't always thank the mirror right away. Often time is needed to process what has been revealed, and you've come to accept that you're not here to be understood, thanked, or validated. You're learning to release the need for recognition. You know that what happens when someone looks into the reflection you offer isn't a rejection of you, it's a confrontation with themselves, and that retreat they make? It's not about you. It's not a reflection of your worth or a signal that you need to change. You've stopped internalizing their reactions. You've learned not to chase closure, not to interpret someone's withdrawal as a wound inflicted by your presence. Because when your energy acts as a mirror, not everyone will be ready to accept what they see. Some will embrace the reflection, others will deny it, and some will choose to walk away from it entirely. All of these reactions are part of the process. Your responsibility is not to hold on to anyone, convince them to stay, or dilute your truth to avoid discomfort. Your purpose is to remain aligned with your frequency, even if that means being misunderstood, even if it means letting go of relationships. That can't meet you in your depth. Yes, it can hurt, but you've come to see that this is the cost of living from a place of deep authenticity. You simply can't return to spaces where the mask is the norm, where avoidance replaces connection, and where truth is sacrificed for the sake of comfort. With every quiet decision, every subtle boundary, every moment of walking away from what doesn't resonate, you've chosen to be that rare space where the soul feels safe to be seen. And while that choice may isolate you from some, it has connected you to something far greater than social validation. It has turned you into a vessel for clarity, a channel for truth, a mirror for transformation, another unmistakable sign. People gravitate toward you in times of confusion, when they feel emotionally lost or overwhelmed. They reach out seeking understanding, release, or direction. In those moments of inner chaos, your presence is like a lighthouse. But once the reflection you offer becomes too clear, too revealing, many quietly step away. It's not uncommon for them to disappear without explanation, leaving you wondering why the connection faded so suddenly. Jung once remarked that the unconscious craves mirrors, yet often resists them when the reflection reveals what the conscious mind isn't prepared to acknowledge. You are that mirror. And you've seen this pattern repeat again and again across relationships, time periods, even life stages. People who once felt deeply connected to you may grow distant, not because of anything you've done, but because the clarity you embody has become too confronting for where they are in their journey. And yes, that used to hurt. You questioned yourself, retraced conversations, wondering if you had misstepped. But now you understand it was never personal. It's the natural rhythm of awakening. When someone comes face to face with their most unfiltered truth, it can be too much. And stepping away is often a defense, not an accusation. You've learned to let go without clinging to unnecessary explanations. You no longer waste your energy trying to make others stay or understand, because the mirror is not responsible for how others react to their own reflection. It simply reflects. As Jung taught, the aspects of ourselves that we suppress have the power to dismantle us from within unless we face them. And often we first recognize them through another. And for many, you are that gateway, not because you try to be, but because your energy no longer supports distortion. Your field has been refined to the point where it naturally dismantles illusions. You can no longer pretend, perform, or participate in emotional spaces that lack depth or sincerity. And for some, that's precisely why they are drawn to you, yet also why they may flee. You've come to realize that not everyone actually desires clarity. Some seek comfort, validation, emotional distraction, or temporary connection. But your energy doesn't accommodate that anymore. Not because you judge it, but because you've evolved past it. Your presence, even in silence, demands honesty. It gently insists that others look within. And not everyone is ready for that. But still, you've made the choice, not to dim your light to make others comfortable, not to mute your energy to avoid being too much. You've chosen to remain true to the clarity you've earned, and in doing so, you continue to serve as a sacred mirror for those who are truly ready to see. You've reached a place where you no longer feel the need to soften your energy just to be more acceptable or easier for others to handle. You understand now that those who are ready to face themselves will naturally be drawn to the reflection you offer. And those who aren't? They too deserve their journey, their space, their pace, their distance. You allow it all to unfold without resistance, without trying to hold on, without expectation. Because you've learned that being a mirror is not about forcing clarity on anyone, it's about letting each soul arrive at its reflection in their own time, without pressure, without need, and never from a place of lack. You've also come to realize something important. The impact you have on others isn't measured by how long they stay in your life, but by the transformation you awaken in them, even if it happens far from your presence. Maybe you've experienced this. Intense, fleeting connections that seem to vanish, only for those same people to return weeks, months, or even years later, changed. Their tone has softened, their words carry more awareness, their eyes reflect something deeper. They don't always explain it, they might never thank you, but you feel it. Something within them shifted. And that subtle shift is part of the mission you carry. Not to lead, not to teach, not to be anyone's guide, but to remain a clear and steady mirror. You're available, aligned, and grounded in your own truth, without needing others to grasp what you reflect in the exact moment it appears. You've learned to honor the unfolding of each person's journey, even when that path leads them away from you. Even when they project their pain onto you, misunderstand your presence, or carry unresolved emotions they aren't ready to claim. Carl Jung said the soul doesn't choose when to see its reflection. It arrives only when it's ready. And your role, simply by standing in your truth, allows that process to happen when it's meant to. Not before, not forced, not manipulated. You've released the need to be chosen. You've let go of the urge to hold on to relationships that only survive when you dim your light or shrink your truth to fit someone else's comfort. You now know that being a mirror also means holding space for silence when it's needed. It means honoring the void, respecting distance, understanding that rejection isn't really about you. It's about the reflection someone wasn't ready to hold, and this has liberated you. You no longer need everyone to stay. You only need to stay loyal to yourself, because those who are ready will find their way to you, and those who aren't will walk their path until life presents them with other mirrors, other moments of truth, other chances to look within. You are beginning to understand that being an energetic mirror is not a role of ease, but it is one of profound impact on them, on you, on a world that desperately needs more individuals willing to reflect truth without disguise. Another unmistakable sign. Your mere presence shifts the atmosphere of any room you enter, without you saying a bye word. You've noticed how energies recalibrate around you. Sometimes tension dissolves. Other times what has long been repressed erupts to the surface. You bring clarity without intention and light without explanation. It's as if your energy field instinctively reorders what has been disorganized, or it amplifies the very disorder that others have tried to ignore. Jung once spoke of the collective unconscious as a web where everything is connected, even beyond language, and you've become a nodal point in that network, a subtle catalyst for what is ready to move. And you've observed that you don't need to intervene. You don't have to analyze, direct, or even speak. Simply by entering a space, frequencies shift. You've been present in rooms thick with emotional weight, where just moments after your arrival, that tension either bursts or dissolves, even though you said nothing. As if your energy alone stirred the stagnation, accelerated what had been held back, and unveiled what others were trying not to confront. You may not always understand why this happens, but you've come to recognize it as a core part of your energetic nature. You are a silent activator. And not because you intend to be, but because your vibrations simply cannot coexist with prolonged imbalance. As Jung once taught, when the unconscious is unsettled, it seeks expression in the external world until it is brought to awareness by someone willing to hold it. Often, that someone is you. Not because you point it out, but because your quiet presence makes the unseen visible. And yes, at times this has made you feel like an unsettling force in certain environments. You've felt how some people perceive you as a threat, not for your words or actions, but for what your energy unknowingly exposes. That's because you no longer sustain false structures. You can no longer hold space for denial disguised as safety. Your being alone creates cracks in the walls people have built to avoid seeing the truth. And although there was a time when you tried to tone yourself down, to shrink so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable, you now know that doing so would mean betraying your soul's purpose. Now you stand rooted in your center, with peace, not defiance, understanding that for some your presence will feel like harmony, for others it will feel like disruption. But either way, you've stopped trying to be what others can control, because you didn't come here to control. You came here to remind. To remind others, through your energy alone, that even chaos has its place within a higher order. That disorder, when held with conscious awareness, becomes the starting point for profound transformation. And this is how you now move through the world, knowing that your presence is healing for some, triggering for others, but always deeply faithful to the vibration your soul chose to carry. You've also come to recognize that your ability to bring harmony or stir disruption has nothing to do with your mood, nor with any deliberate intention. It's not something you control. It's simply the result of your inner alignment. Your energetic field has reached such a level of internal coherence that it cannot sustain dissonance around it without causing shifts. Your presence itself acts as a catalyst. It triggers dormant codes within others, subtle awakenings they may not even be aware of, yet can no longer ignore. You've noticed how, before you arrive, certain environments feel stuck, trapped in mechanical routines, in lifeless conversations, in gestures performed out of habit rather than presence. And then, something changes the moment you walk in. Not because you say anything provocative or challenge anyone directly, but because you carry with you the frequency of silent truth. A quiet vibration that asks questions without words, that pierces through layers of inertia. This energetic ripple is often not understood intellectually, but it is unmistakably felt. Jung once said that the unconscious is always seeking light, and many times you are the conduit through which that light begins to stream in, uninvited perhaps, but necessary. What was hidden begins to surface. What was stuck starts to shift. What survived on autopilot begins to fall away, making space for something more real, more alive. And while there was a time you may have tried to avoid this role, attempted to, go unnoticed, blend in, minimize your impact for the sake of others' comfort, you don't do that anymore. Now you understand that your energy wasn't sent here to please, it was sent here to remind. Not to pacify, but to awaken. And yes, awakening can be uncomfortable, it can feel disruptive, but it is essential. Because those who remain by your side after that initial disarray are the ones truly prepared to inhabit deeper, more honest spaces. And those who walk away, you let them go without resistance, without bitterness, because you now understand your presence isn't here to hold anyone back. It's here to stir what has been asleep, to open doors that can only be opened when someone is brave enough to face what they've long avoided. And as you hold up that mirror for others, you continue to see yourself reflected too. You are still learning, still refining, still remembering who you are, because even the clearest mirror must remain grounded in its own truth. Being an energetic mirror is not a role one simply chooses. It's a call, a soul-level summons that turns you into a sacred vessel, a quiet activator, a threshold through which the unseen becomes visible. This path isn't simple, it isn't soft, but you've chosen to walk it with integrity, without betraying your essence, without forcing yourself to belong in spaces that no longer resonate with your vibration. As Jung reminded us, those who act as mirrors must also protect themselves with love, with boundaries, with consciousness. A mirror does not absorb, it reflects. It does not drag, it reveals. It does not carry others. It holds space from its own unshakable center, and you are learning to dwell in that center with a kind of dignity that doesn't shout, but shifts reality simply by existing. If something deep inside you stirred while watching this, if the words here echoed truths you felt, but never fully spoken, it's because you already know the frequency you carry. You already are this mirror. And if you're ready to continue walking in your truth, to remember the silent power that lives within you, then join us. Subscribe to Whispers of the Soul, because here words don't just speak, they reflect. Here messages are not meant to impress the mind, but to stir the spirit. Here those who are ready discover the mirror their soul has been seeking all along.